Hi there, I am Citra360. This is a tutorial, a live tutorial for those on live stream. We're going to be talking about line work and how to do it. Alright, there's many uses for line work in art. It could be very subtle, like in this illustration piece I just finished. You can faintly see the lines in there. I put a little of a blur effect to it, so it's still there. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about the fluid motion of lines and how to achieve such an effect. Because a lot of issues with beginners is that they have problems getting the lines looking smooth and organic, like the curvature of her face around all the way around under her chin. We're going to be talking about that today. Of course, this is going to be a line tutorial. We're not going to be talking about coloring, so I'm not going to explain how I got this kind of effect. We're going to be strictly talking about lines, just like in this illustration here. It's just going to be getting you into comfortable mode and doing line work inside of Photoshop or any other program for that matter. Alright, first off, the settings. Let's zoom in. Okay, first we're going to get into the brush tool that you just hit the shortcut B, and we're going to pop up the brush window. You can find that under Window, Brush. And this is the typical settings I have for my brushes for line work. Alright, make sure we're on the standard shape for the basic brush. Make sure the hardness level is all the way to 100%. Make sure the spacing is to the far left as possible. If you have some spacing, it's kind of hard to see. Let me make it a little bit bigger. If you have some spacing, you're going to have just a bunch of little circles here, and that's not going to look too good. So make sure your spacing is set all the way to the left and your hardness all the way to the right, and you can find this under the brush tip shape category under the brush window. As for other programs, I do not know any other programs, the settings for them. You're going to have to play around with them, see what kind of settings they have available for you on your brushes. Just make sure that it is smooth as possible and as hard as possible. The next thing we're going to do is to make sure we turn off transfer. What this basically does is creating an opacity from 0% to 100% to the pressure of the stylus. We don't want that at all, because otherwise we're going to have some inconsistent levels of opacity of the lines. We want absolute 100% opacity at 100% of the time. So we turn that off. Still doesn't do anything. I gotta make sure to turn other settings off. There we go. We gotta make sure our brush preview is completely filled out from tip to the other tip. So we're gonna have some smooth looking lines there. No opacity change. That's what we want. Alright, other things you can do is you don't really have to do is check off the settings smoothing on. It's not going to smooth your brushes, your brush strokes that much. It's just going to add a little bit of, it rounds off the edges just a little bit. Alright, shape dynamics, we're going to make sure we're set to pen pressure mode. This is really important when you have a tablet. Make sure your tablet is configured to your program correctly so it can detect the various level of pressure you have for your pen. Minimum diameter, make sure that's all the way to your left. Let's make sure angle jitter is all the way to the left. Basically, make sure everything is set to the left. You can play around with this later and see what kind of effects you prefer, but for now, we'll just have everything set to the left. Okay, let's make sure, okay, other settings involved will be up to the top left corner. Okay, make sure right here the opacity is 100% as always. Make sure that this is turned off. This basically forces the pressure of the tablet to control the opacity. We don't want that. We want that off. Make sure your flow is 100% and also off. So that means we're 100% hard and 100% opacity at all times. Generally, a lot of beginning artists, they have a problem using programs like Photoshop that has no stabilizer, getting smooth lines. So they'll be like that, trying to make a smooth line, just going all over the place. When you're trying to achieve a smoother tip to tip, line, curve. There's nothing else much to it. You just have to practice drawing straight lines over and over and over and over and over and over again as much as possible. An easy step to getting that kind of practice into you is by cross-hatching. Just, cross-hatching, shade your characters with overlapping lines over and over and over. That can really get you a lot of practice in creating lines as quick as possible. Do this for a couple weeks. I know that sounds daunting, but you really need to get the motion of drawing lines practice into your hand. And because literally, just practice drawing lines over and over and over as straight as possible. My lines are not that straight, but you get the idea. Because if you keep doing this over time, you can go from doing this, I know I'm exaggerating, to drawing more and more perfect lines every time. This is really useful because you can be drawing buildings, sketching buildings real quickly, and you don't have to use rulers or straight edge tools or anything like that. You just draw the building in perspective, etc. Whoops. Alright. Once you get the hang of drawing lines, you can start moving on to the actual curvatures of the body, faces, torsos, whatever. Oh yeah, one important tip I have is do not draw with the wrist. That's pretty bad. You want to be able to draw using the upper muscles of your arm. So instead of drawing with the wrist, draw with the arm. Drawing with the arm allows you to get more smoother lines and control compared to just using the wrist. It will take some time because we're all taught how to how to write using with our wrist, because we're always trying to draw real small. But if you start drawing with your arm, you'll get much control over the consistency and accuracy of your lines compared to using your wrist. And as well, you don't get any wrist cramps or hand cramps as associated with drawing with your wrist over time. I have never got a wrist cramp at all because I've always been drawing with my upper arm. Let's see. Alright, before doing any line work, you got to make sure you have a good sketch. Let's just do a basic pony face here. Don't worry about doing the perfection of this face right here. We're just talking about the line work and everything. Alright. So we got ourselves a face. There's some inaccuracies with it. We'll worry about that later. We're going on to the opacity of the sketch and lower it down to 42%. For those doing traditional work, you'll be sketching with a harder pencil like a 6H pencil or a 4H pencil to start out the sketch. You don't use anything darker because you'll be using a darker pencil or a pen to do the line work. Alright, make sure the color of the brush is always set to black. Or if you prefer going straight to color, don't worry, just go ahead and use color. As I said before, to the settings, make sure it's set off. The pressure sensitivity for the stylus, the tablet. Double check your brush settings. I always catch myself, the Photoshop turns transfer on automatically. I hate that. Make sure your transfer is off. Everything looks good. Looks like we're ready to start lining. Alright. I should have mentioned this earlier, but you had to have a high resolution canvas for what you're working on if you're working digitally. Right now, looks like I'm not that high res. My pixel density is 1693 and 1852. I'm going to change that to 3000. My resolution is also at 300. That gives me enough pixels to work with as I work with smaller lines. And when you save the image and shrink it back down, the lines will look much more smoother and any little mistakes are hidden away automatically. Alright, looks like we're all good. To start off with, we're going to start off with the chin here. And just like I said before, we'll just do this all in one smooth motion. Just like that. Or, if you prefer, we can do this in 2 strokes. Like that, and like that. There we go. And we can just erase away the unnecessary lines. This is a technique that could be very useful in getting the harder curves down perfect, rather than doing this over and over and over again. We just get 2 lines we like and erase what we don't like. Make sure your eraser is also set to the same settings as your brush. 100% opacity, no transfer, everything. All right. So we got the line of the cheek right here. Now we're going to start doing the nose. I'm going to plan a curve right here and another curve right here. So I can do it all in one motion, or as I said before, 2 motions. 1 motion, 2 motion. I'm happy with those lines. I'm just going to erase the excess. There we go. There we go. As you see, I'm erasing lines I don't like and tapering off the edges here, making it a little bit stylized as I go along. With practice, you can get more comfortable using Photoshop for lines. I know it took me quite a while to get it to look smooth. As I said before, do not use your wrist, use your arm. And practice making lines over and over and over again. For people doing traditionally, that is, they have a bigger benefit because they don't have the ability to erase. That's a good thing because they don't have the luxury of Control Z, and it gets more ingrained in their mind of what they did wrong and what they did right. In fact, even for those with a digital tablet, I recommend doing practice line work on paper and pen. It may sound scary, but I've been doing a lot of line work on paper, and when I went back to digital, all of a sudden it became much more easier. Alright, let's just finish up this face here. As you can see, all these little motions are practiced and ingrained in my muscle memory. Don't worry if you're not getting it like all perfect or exact like you want it to be. It just takes time and a ton of practice. I have 10 years under my belt and about 3 years practicing line work, and it took a lot of practice. You won't be suddenly like good just from watching this video. I recommend immediately practice what you see on this video many times over, and never give up. Alrighty. Alright, let's get a little bit organic with this. Rather than just doing a simple curve for the neck, let's try to add little indications of fur. To do that, we're not going to try to do it automatically. We can just erase and add, erase and add. Alright, let's add some fur right here. And maybe one more right here. See, very simple. I just erase and add, erase and add. Don't worry about if it's perfect or not. We don't care about that. We're just trying to get ourselves focused on just getting our lines looking good. Which sounds kind of a oxymoron, but basically we just want to focus on getting the drawing done rather than little tiny details no one will notice. Alrighty. With practice, this becomes more easier, as I said. And make sure you overlap. That's okay to overlap. We don't want to We don't want to go slow, because that would cause a lot of jitter in our hands, and that would not look like a good line. What you need to do instead is to be confident with your lines and just do it all in one solid stroke. Alright. Sometimes I get real sloppy with my lines, and that's okay. Alright, let's see, what else to talk about? That's pretty much how you do line work. It's from this point on is all about stylization and what you want to do with the line work. You can add little tiny details to the drawing, like little puffs of hair right here and there. You don't have to add lines everywhere. You can make it more comical wise by thickening the points between each lines, making an indication of shadow. You can perfect the tapers at the ends of the line so it looks more smooth and organic. And any other little mistakes you see around the canvas. Alright. Any questions? Anyone has some questions? What about scales? That'll just be a stylization approach, not necessarily lining. People can go with overlapping of the scales, like so. You know, don't worry about perfection, everything like that. You can go back in and erase the little overlaps you have. And it just requires a whole lot of patience and practice. As I said before, if you practice doing lots of lines and ovals, you get practice into knowing how to do the scales more naturally and easily. Or there is the minimalism approach, where it's just slight hints of scales. It's not like every single scale is drawn to the point where it kind of looks like little bumps. Okay, what kind of art classes would you recommend? I'm just curious. I've never had a art class besides the ones I had in high school, but the one I had in high school was focused on traditional artwork. And bell work was basically we just learned and studied the history of art, which is important, but we didn't really focus much on developing our skills assets, so I'm mostly self-taught. As for schools, I recommend, it depends what kind of direction you want to go with art. Whether it's just a hobby, you can just follow tutorials and teach yourself how to do it. If you want to go in the direction of a professional working artist, you want to get paid to do artwork, you can look up some art colleges online to see what's available. Most important art colleges are in California, so you might have to do some moving. That's why I was self-taught. I couldn't move at the time. Or you can try Schoolism. Schoolism, it is an online art class. I actually plan to attend one myself. It's a little expensive, like in the $1,000 kind of expensive, because it's professional courses taught by professional instructors that are working in the industry. Like there's some instructors in there that has created concept artwork for movies like How to Train Your Dragon or Marvel movies. There are some extreme talents on there. Make whatever choice you have, make sure you choose one, follow through with it, create some small steps, small goals, and keep practicing no matter what. Alright, let's see, what other questions is there? How do you do feathers? It's just like scales. You're going to have to reference actual birds, see how they work, overlap them, see what kind of shapes you can get, whether it's realistic or whatnot. You're gonna have to that's pretty much, you're gonna have to practice anatomy, and you don't really have to do line work with it. It's stylization. There's a lot of directions you can use lines for, whether it's minimalism or extreme amount of detail. If you want extreme amount of detail, take a look at some comic work. Mention canvas flipping for error checking. That's a good point, Mentor. That's a good point. For people on digital canvas, on a digital canvas like I am right now, inside of Photoshop, you can go into image rotation, flip canvas horizontal, so you can take a fresh look at your drawing. Basically, you get used to errors. You absorb them. You no longer notice the errors you have. And when you flip the canvas, it forces you in a whole new perspective on your own drawing. And you can easily find drawings or things that looks off. Like for me, the left eye looks a little bit too high, and I can fix that if I was actually working on this. For traditional artists, you can use a mirror. I know traditional artists has a big mirror next to their drawing, and they put their drawing next to the mirror and see if there's can spot any mistakes. So it's not strictly a digital technique. And inside of Photoshop, you can set a shortcut for it. I have mine set to Command 1, which won't work for you because you don't have yours set up. You can set yourself to set up custom shortcuts. You can look that up on Google. I'm not going to go into it here because it takes too long. Okay, Egwin says, I know it's not about the lining, but what about the circles for the head or bones? Like right there, you don't use any reference and did a custom pose. That just comes from practice. That just comes with a ton of practice. I have 10 years of practice under my belt. You don't need 10 years to get this good, but it probably would require a good year or two before you can get more comfortable drawing the ovals and circles. I know it sounds terribly long, but trust me, it is necessary and it's worth it. Because I'm not perfect at drawing circles. It takes a lot of skill and a lot more practice to draw perfect circles. That's why I recommend using the two-stroke and overlapping technique. You can just get the kind of curve you want with two overlapping lines to get the type of angles you want, and just edit the line as much as possible. It's all about practice. It's all about referencing. There's no other way around it. Alright, let's see. What do you personally prefer? Thicker outlines or outlines the same thickness as the other lines of the picture? I prefer thick outlines, but I know some artists, typically anime artists, they'll have a canvas like 6,000 pixels, and they'll have lines extremely tiny, almost to the point that they look like 1 point. Which helps them when they go in coloring, where it kind of hides the lines and kind of makes them more organic. For me, I like thicker lines, and where you apply them is generally the longer edges of the drawing. Kind of adds more like a comic feel to the drawing overall, adding thicker lines here and there. Alright, let's see. Any shading tips? No, not for this tutorial. That'd be for another tutorial. How about line weight or line quality? That's just a temporary, not temporary. That's just a personal preference for each artist. I generally have my cursor, my brush size, about semi big. But basically that means I can have very thick lines to very small, tiny lines. It depends how hard I press into the canvas. So I can have like the eye and then the eyelash. So I can easily create some eyelashes here and there. It just requires a lot of practice. So I have like various levels of lines here, from thick to thin. Some people will have their cursor always small, and then when they go back over it again with a thicker brush if they wanted to. It all depends on the artist. I get some phone calls going on. Not the best time to do a tutorial live stream. Alright, I guess that is it. When you learn how to do all the line work right, you can accomplish anything you want. I guess that is it. Thank you guys for coming. I hope this was very very helpful. I'm not the best tutorial artist. Make sure you practice. Make sure you practice a lot. Make sure you reference your photographs. Make sure you just pull through, toughen up, keep yourself motivated, and just literally draw a whole bunch of lines. Fill up 10 pages, nothing but straight lines. And circles too, to get that muscle memory in your hands. Thanks for this cute tutorial. Bye, Sidra. Thanks for streaming on my day off. Alright, thank you guys. Thank you. Alright, time to stop this right here.